I'm Gloria Strode, and welcome to Straightforward. Today, our very special guest is the Honorable Judge Marc D'Antonio from the Probate Court. Thank you so much, Judge, for coming.
My pleasure. I'm proud to be here.
Well, you have had a journey. You shared with me that you just didn't start at being a judge, that you've been a servant for the community for quite some time. Share that journey with us so our young people can know that you got to start at point A in order to get to point B.
Okay. Well, I went to college in New Orleans.
Oh, really? Where did you go?
Tulane.
Tulane. Okay, a very good friend, Dr. Deborah Daniels, and Dr. Deborah Daniels went to Tulane for medical school.
There's a couple of medical students or medical doctors
Yeah.
up here from Tulane.
That
actually.
you know.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I went there for undergraduate, majored in political economy.
Political economy. So what did you think you were going to do as a political economist?
Well, actually, I think I wanted to, at that point, to be honest with you, I was just thinking about staying in college and taking classes that interest me.
You were going to be a professional student is what we called it.
What I learned actually in undergrad and talking with advisors and everything is that your options are probably most open to be whatever you want when you're an undergraduate, and you shouldn't limit yourself. You should see what interests you and take classes that interest you.
Okay, now that's a very good perspective because most parents, as parents do, they want you to figure it out in advance, and that's not always smart because you get them going through and changing the majors at the last minute and not graduating on time. So that sounds like sound advice. Just kind of explore and then be sure that you're sure.
And I liked a political economy meant I could take economics, philosophy, history, all those kinds of classes without having to do too much of the hard math.
You could look at the money, but not worry about.
I could follow the theorems and look at the footnote and say, okay, I remember that from calculus, but I'm glad I don't have to prove it.
Right. So at that time, you were not thinking about law or judge or any of that. You were just
probably my junior to senior year. I started to think about, well, what continues to interest me that I can make money doing, and that's when I got interested in law school.
Okay. All right. And so how was that living in, because you're from New York.
Right.
So how was it going from New York, all the cold snow, to New Orleans, which is, we know that's a party town. So how did you manage that to just kind of stay on track? Or did we manage that?
I was 17 when I got
You
down
were
there.
17, right?
So there was a little bit of a learning curve there.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I was on the swim team my first semester in college, and the priorities between doing well in school and the other activities New Orleans availed one of, and swim team, especially when I realized I was never going to the Olympics.
Okay.
So I sacrificed swimming.
So you had something to kind of keep you a little grounded. And that's the thing that, parents have to understand. When you're 17, and of course I was, and you first go off to college, it's much to explore. But you were able to balance all of those things, have a little fun, and
also figuring out how much each class cost.
Wow.
Definitely motivated me not to miss classes.
Yeah, it's like you got to do it and make sure you show up where you're supposed to be. Well, I was that same person. It's like you're going to have fun, but you're going to have to take care of business because it's money.
Well,
Absolutely.
and showing up is really one of the most important things young folks, anyone can do.
Right.
Even if you don't want to.
You got to show up. Okay, and so you went through Tulane. Did you live on campus, off campus?
On campus first year, and then off campus after that, like most everyone else.
How did that work? Because, we are already not getting instructions. One thing about college, when you go, we all know this, that if you've been away from college, away from home to college, nobody's going to wake you up. Nobody's going to say you got to be here, there, or whatever. So you went from the dormitory lifestyle to living out on the economy.
With other students.
Other students. So how did that work?
Well, actually, I started doing really well once I realized I wasn't a morning person, so if I could take afternoon classes.
Okay, so you figured it out.
Yeah. And so I it was a growing experience. They always say high school is a socialization process, and so was college. And learning how, 4 guys learning somebody has to clean up the kitchen.
Yes.
And if you don't,
right. And if you don't go buy food when you live on the economy, then you don't eat.
Yeah. Well, as I said, those kitchen sink and those dirty dishes that sat there a month or two before one of us learned. So.
Until it turned into a science project.
Exactly.
That is so funny. And I know all of us that have gone away to college, we have some very, very interesting stories. And so you did Tulane undergrad. And where did you go to grad?
I went to law school at Vanderbilt in Nashville.
Really? Very prestigious, historic.
I don't know how I got in.
Oh, sure you do. Sure you do.
And
how did that happen?
Well,
Why did you pick Vanderbilt? Because you were there in New Orleans. You're from New York. How did that happen?
I pretty much looked at a lot of different schools around the country. I almost went to Fordham Law School in New York. I had a girlfriend in Birmingham, Alabama when I was looking at law school, so all of a sudden Nashville was close driving distance.
Just across the Alabama line.
Yeah, and she broke up with me, which made me study in law school. So it was sort of a win.
You didn't have to worry about all of that commuting over the weekend. It gave you more time to study.
And if you're a little bit depressed, so you study more.
Yeah, so you could get refocused.
That's
is what mothers would like for you to do, is get
refocused.
Right. And so at Vanderbilt, when you left Vanderbilt, what did you do from there?
Well, actually, I guess it's more important to think about during my first summer working. Well, you have to get a job during the summer if you want to practice law. So I worked for a fancy New York City law firm and for Texaco. My father had ties to Texaco, so that probably got me in the door.
Well, yeah, it's good to have but at least one thing about it, though, Judge, people can hook you up, but you still need the skills and whatever to stay. They can open the door, but if you're not bringing it, you don't get to stay.
Well, what I learned there was I didn't necessarily want to be a corporate lawyer.
Okay, it was too...
Well, I care about people, and this really was more of a focus on whether Citibank would lose $50,000 in a transaction or not. And there were plenty of other law students that were much more interested in going down that corporate road.
Right, so they were more focused on money, the big bucks, and helping the companies. And then at that time, so this is why we have you as this great judge that we have here in Columbus, is because early on in your career, you cared about people.
Yeah, well, in my second year, I volunteered at Westchester Putnam Legal Services representing low-income people in non-criminal matters.
Oh, and so I'm sure your parents were really concerned because they thought you were going to be this lawyer and all this money, and there you were, the people's judge, serving the people.
Actually, the bigger concern I had was the cost of living in the New York metro area was such that they said you probably can't afford to be a legal aid lawyer here unless you have a significant other to support you.
So that's probably how we made it down
And that's
south.
how I made it to Columbus, Georgia. At the time, Georgia Legal Services, I basically went on a quest to figure out where I could represent low-income people in non-criminal matters and be able to live. And at the time, Georgia Legal Services had a loan forgiveness program. And I talked to the Columbus office and the Waycross office.
Wow.
Columbus was more appealing.
Exactly, I'm sure, coming from New York.
Not to be disrespectful
I
to
understand. That's a big
Waycross.
leap from New York to even to Columbus. Well, what we're going to do now, Judge, we're going to take our first break, go to our sponsors, and we'll be right back. Okay. All right? We'll be right back after word from some of our sponsors. Straightforward is brought to you by Chalk by Quincy introduces Excellence Redefined, timepieces of the finest technology, luxury, and class with tons of style at chalklifestyle.com. Renal Associates, LLC, a team of physicians dedicated to excellent kidney care with 5 convenient locations to serve you. Stark Avenue, Columbus, Bradley Park, Columbus, Lafayette Parkway, LaGrange, East Burkhalter Avenue, Buena Vista, and Springs Street in Warm Springs. Thai Cuisine, the area's only authentic Thai restaurant. Open for lunch and dinner, Monday through Saturday. Located in the Village Green Shopping Center on the 280 bypass in Phoenix City. Apple Tax Services, located at 7413 Whitesville Road, Suite 400A, as in Apple. For professional, efficient, and courteous service, call today at 706-243-2595. Apple Tax Services, a company you can trust.
To represent a home of distinction requires highly qualified real estate professionals with unique experience and local expertise. Elite Ventures Realty is now Prestige Property Brokers, here to assist with buying or selling, construction of your dream home, or building a real estate investment portfolio. And Prestige also offers certified relocation agents to proudly serve our military families. Contact Prestige Property Brokers to begin your next real estate journey.
Welcome back to Straightforward. I'm continuing my awesome conversation with Judge Marc D'Antonio from the Probate Court. So, Judge, we got lucky. For those of us, I'm a Georgia peach. I know where Waycross is. I've been to Waycross. So we won you from Waycross. Yeah, because it was kind of a culture shock to go from New York to Columbus. I can't even imagine going from New York to Waycross, which are great people because I went to college with some people from Waycross.
Well, I don't know if it was that big again, I was educated in the South.
Okay.
And so I don't know if it was that big a culture shock for me to live in Columbus. I know some folks that are born and raised in Columbus will always refer to me as a Yankee. Although I point out that I've lived here longer than my kids.
Right.
I've been in Columbus since 1991.
Wow, and you came here with Georgia Legal Services. And so you've invested in this great career in education. Tulane, which is a very well-respected the Vanderbilt University, and you decided you wanted to serve the people. And so you came with legal aid, and what was your first salary?
$24,600.
And so did your parents think that you had lost your mind or what?
Well, my dad had passed away, and I think my mom was just happy I had a job.
Oh, okay then. Well, mom was just proud that you were going to the next step.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times the young folks, they come out of college, they have all of these degrees, and they think, well, today I graduated and I got to be making $100,000. And normally it doesn't work that way. My first job, I made $13,000 a year down in South Florida, which that was a lot of money, back in the 70s. So you came to Columbus, worked with legal aid, and how long were you with?
Almost 15 years.
Really?
Yeah, I really enjoyed, the big thing about being a legal aid lawyer was I could help people without having to worry about billing them.
Okay.
I still had to keep track of my time and things along those lines, but if
they
there was
didn't have all of those tax and those types of headaches where you got to make sure your bookkeeping is good.
Well, we had grant compliance, so
well,
there was
we know about grants,
I
but
clearly had to do that.
Right.
But in terms of actually practicing law, I could focus on that as opposed to marketing myself or something like that, and helping people.
Okay, and so you went from legal aid, and then how did we get you, this great community servant, as our probate judge?
Well, in 2005, I had heard my kids were getting to the point where I kind of thought I had to maybe make a little bit more money than legal aid.
I know, they needed some money.
Well, and my wife felt pretty strongly about that
right.
too. And so I started looking around. I heard that I hung a shingle out briefly to represent the Department of Family and Children's Services in Sumter County, Americus, Georgia.
Oh, yes. I used to work for DFACS.
Well, and so I was doing that, but I didn't have health insurance through that, and I had heard that the chief clerk position for the probate court was coming open. And so I met with Judge Lumpkin, I applied there, and the probate court in some ways was similar to things I did at Legal Services.
Right. So those earlier careers prepared you for where you are now. And that's the thing I like to try to tell young folks. It's as we acquire skills as we go along the way. It's just helping us so we'll be better when we get to where we're destined to be. So you worked for Judge Lumpkin.
Yes.
And so you were able to just be on the inside and see how all of this worked.
Learn from Judge Lumpkin about a lot of things. I think we really brought I had more of a litigation background, and so there was some strengths there. She had more of a real property and real estate background, so there were things I learned about from her on those issues.
Yeah,
too.
so you all just married your experience together and just made an awesome team.
Right.
And that's really what it's about. You got to let people do what they do best, and you learn from me, I learn from you, and then that makes everybody great. Okay, so a lot of our citizens are not familiar with how the courts all work differently. Most folks are very familiar with Superior Court because that's a lot of if you commit a crime, or the recorder's court if you get a speeding ticket. Right. So I want you to just give us a little quick civics lesson on the different courts and what your court actually, the services that you provide.
Okay, well, the probate court, like when I was at Legal Aid, doesn't handle criminal matters, or at least my probate court doesn't.
Right.
There's actually two different types of probate courts in the state of Georgia.
Okay.
In counties in which the population is over 90,000 people, you can, my powers in terms of appealing me if you don't like what happens and all that are the same as if you didn't like what a superior court judge would do.
Really?
So you have to go to the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court. In counties with populations of less than 90,000 people, if you don't like what Judge Lakes in Harris County does, you have a right to appeal him to a superior court judge.
Really?
And Judge Lakes, I'm picking on Harris County because I've been talking to him a lot lately.
Right.
He does traffic. And so he actually is the recorder's court in addition
Okay,
to...
because that's a smaller county, and so they kind of wear different hats.
And so there's a lot of different things. The probate court up until 1974 was called the Court of the Ordinary.
The Court of the Ordinary.
And people would come there for ordinary purposes. In some probate courts, you do birth certificates. It also explains why we do marriage, different phases of life. We do marriage licenses.
That's a happy thing. You're always happy to do those.
And we do like when people become incapacitated, we help vulnerable people there, and then we probate estates.
Yeah, and see, for me, most of the people that I know, they know that you can go get married at your court, and they know that if someone passes away, then it's through the probate court where you have to, the estate has
you have to probate the, well, I actually, when I'm thinking even as a legal aid lawyer with some interaction with the probate court, but not as much. I always thought of probate court as where deceased people's property is passed on.
But most people do. Most people do.
And probate actually means proof.
Okay.
So when you're probating a will, you're proving that is the will. A lot of times people are in a vulnerable situation when they come to probate court having lost a loved one. So I try to make it as easy on them as possible, but I'm also making sure that they follow the law, that we go through the formal process of everyone that you'd be sitting in front of me probating your mother's will. You'd have to take an oath that is in fact her will and that you promise to follow it.
Wow.
And then if you don't, that's where breaches of that oath become contested matters.
Oh, and so where I was just thinking that a lot of what you did was the happy stuff, like the getting married and that kind of thing, when we have to deal with the end of life business matters, which can just go on and on and on. It can be complex.
Right, and not every family agrees.
Oh, and
sometimes
how
you have children of first marriages and second spouses, and so there is some of that family. People are
the dynamics.
And literally millions of dollars has to pass through my signature each week. So it's very important to get the probate matters correct, but that's really only a small fraction of what the probate court does. I spend a lot of my time looking out for vulnerable people.
Okay, well, what we're going to do, Judge, we're going to take our final break, go to our sponsors, and we'll be right back. Okay. We'll be right back after word from some of our sponsors. Straightforward is brought to you by Warrior Outreach. Contact Command Sergeant Major Retired Sam Rhodes or Kathy Rhodes. Freedom Printing for all of your designer printing needs. Gunboat Plaza, Suite 18. Progressive Funeral Home, family owned and operated since 1952. The George Ford legacy of high standards continues today in the compassionate and professional services provided. A touch of dignity for those who care. Progressive Funeral Home, 4235 St. Mary's Road. Trusted by generation.
Walmart's reason for supporting Thurgood Marshall College Fund is simple. We like to win. And we have been given a lot of exposure to some incredible talent. And we also believe that it's a part of our responsibility to the community to give back. This is a great opportunity to do both. It's been a wonderful experience for us through the years. We've appreciated our partnership. We believe in return on investment, and we have definitely had a remarkable return.
welcome back to Straightforward. I'm continuing this awesome conversation with our wonderful probate judge, Judge Marc D'Antonio. So Judge, for those of us that have lost parents or some people have lost their spouse, that's a very difficult, and so you're kind of trying to keep everybody calm and you want to be fair and follow the law.
Right.
So you have, I don't know if it's the pleasure or that's one of your duties of having to work through that with families.
Right, and that's an important part of what I do, and it's an important part of what my very small staff does.
Oh, I know, and they work so hard, because do you all do the gun permits and all of
Yes.
that too? It's so busy in
We
there,
have-
but you have a kind of like a streamlined staff.
We have 7 employees for over 200,000 people here in Columbus. By contrast, Macon has 11 employees.
Wow.
And a number of other cities. We're small and we have to work very hard. We're sort of a little bit busting at the seams.
Yeah, pretty much. No, really, and
If
it's
you've been
wearing
up
a
there,
lot of
yeah.
hats. I've been in there. It's the guns, it's the getting married, it's the folks who need those that have special needs.
Well, we actually, as I said, there's a number of things in terms of vulnerable people. I do an awful lot of temporary guardianships involving minors, minor conservatorships. If a minor inherits money, it's not the parent's money, and we have to make sure that it's spent the way the law applies for that. I'm lucky to have a law clerk, Elena Barnett, that helps with the minor guardianships and actually the adult guardianships too. If you
And so the adult guardianship, I know a friend of ours who was a teacher in this area for many years, well respected, just wonderful woman, suffered with Alzheimer's prior to her death. And so they were trying to go back and forth with getting someone to be her guardian. Are you the person that's
Yes.
working with that as well?
We do. I'm the person that declares people incompetent, that they lack capacity to make decisions about their health, safety, and welfare, that they lack capacity to make decisions regarding their finances, and then have to decide who would best be the person to make the decisions about their health, safety, and welfare, who would best be the person to make the decisions about their finances. And sometimes that can
Jeez.
raise emotions pretty high with family members,
Absolutely.
too.
Oh my goodness. So I can just imagine, especially folks that come from big families. People don't always agree. That don't mean we still love each other, but we just don't see things the same.
You know, and they all might agree about that they love mom, but they all have very different views on how best to take care of mom.
Or who should be in charge.
Right, and
And not always did mom leave things laid out so clear. So when they're not so clear, that makes your job
that's
more
what I'm there for.
difficult. Yeah.
And we've even had to have visitation, set up visitation schedules with the folks so that they can visit their incapacitated mother, because that's how bad it kind of can be like a custody case.
Really? So sometimes the siblings are not on the same page enough where you have to, the judge, say, well, you can visit mom on Tuesday at 2 and you can visit mom
on
Thursday.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. And so you said to me when I was visiting your office last year, that those are the things that make you lose sleep sometimes.
Well, getting that wrong really is something that bothers me. Also, the probate court has the jurisdiction over people with severe and persistent mental illnesses. And so on Wednesdays every week, I am the person that determines whether you're in need of involuntary treatment, whether that means at an inpatient psychiatric facility or an outpatient community service provider.
Really? So you're the person that decides whether the person goes to West Central. In the old days, we called it Milledgeville, where it was the big state mental health hospital, or New Horizons under their
American Work, New Horizons, the Bradley Center. West Central actually has only one civil unit these days.
Really?
Most of the folks at West Central are waiting, or are there on a forensic case to determine whether or not they're competent to stand trial. So more folks these days end up going to the Bradley Center for Crisis Stabilization.
And so you are the person that's looking at all the facts and making that decision.
Whether or not someone needs to be forced to stay at the Bradley Center or forced to stay at West Central.
Really?
Or forced to keep your appointments by having a court order with New Horizons or American Works.
So I guess the community, we just take you for granted. And I think that's not a good thing. I'm glad you're here visiting. No, because I don't think because we don't always teach civics and how all the parts of the government work. Things just kind of get, waxed over. So besides the happy stuff with the marriage and
the carry permits and the swearing people.
And the swearing in people, which a lot of folks see you then. That sometimes
Right.
that might be their first encounter if they've not lost a loved one and you're probating wills and that kind of thing. But so you have this awesome task, and it's a burden, I'm sure, because it's hard. I'm an old social worker, 30-something years. A lot of those issues, you can't just put them to rest at 5 o'clock. Because when you go home at night, you're still trying to make sure that you're making the best decision.
Well, and I try to put myself in the shoes of the person that they might perceive me as acting adversely to.
Right.
I mean, I take it very, very seriously if I'm going to say, no, you can't leave the hospital.
Really?
Or encourage people, if you take your medicine, you might get out sooner. I mean, it's a very difficult situation there, and each situation depends on, the facts determine what's going to happen for almost everybody.
Really? Oh my goodness. So, but your spirit, you're always so very friendly, very humble, very accommodating, and with all of that on your plate, I mean, really, you just got to have a special group of guardian angels, because that is something that you just can't walk away from.
Well, you want to help people. I mean, that's what I'm there for. I'm there to help people.
Okay. And so share with our audience, before we run out of time, where your office is located and your hours. And hopefully people will see you out more in the community. I know you've 7 people doing all of that work. Hopefully we'll get this big windfall and you'll get enough money so you can be out and speak to the community, because I think the community needs to be educated on what you do on a daily basis for the citizens. So.
Well, I'm always happy to speak to groups in the community about almost any topic related to probate court.
Right.
The reason no one knows as much about the incapacitated adults and people with severe and persistent mental illness is those are closed, sealed, and confidential proceedings.
Right.
So it's not something that the public is generally exposed to.
Right.
But we are located on the 6th floor of the Government Center, 110th Street.
Okay.
We're open from 8:30 to 5 o'clock Monday through Friday.
Okay.
However, we stopped taking new weapons carry license applications and marriage license applications at 4 o'clock.
Okay, so you have to have some cutoff. And for those that might want to elope or something, they need to get a plan so they're not walking in that late. Probably do it like right after lunch hour. Well, I thank you so much, Judge. I appreciate your humbleness, your willingness to want to serve and take care of those that are not able to take care of themselves, and all the services that you provide for families. Those of us that have traveled the road of having to probate a will, we know how serious it is, and I'm so very thankful that you're there to watch over the citizens, and we thank you so much for coming.
Well, I appreciate your support and everyone's support.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
This has been Straightforward. If you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. Until next time, be blessed.